Are you ready?
1, 2, 3. Hey, outside.
Outside, welcome back. We're together. I know we're maybe not practicing social distancing, but we're not like facing each other.
Besides, there's a 25-mile-an-hour wind out there that's kind of blowing things away.
Yeah, we're back here in Rainier, outside the Muni, where we usually have been recording, minus our Zoom time off.
Yeah, and we have proceeding.
And we got fans, or something.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you. So we took a couple of days off. I know some people were saying, "Where's the new show?" I was supposed to be gone for a couple of days, but we're here on Friday, June 5th, and George, it's good to be back in person.
It is. No, I agree.
So,
I agree, and I've seen friends out here today. I haven't seen these guys in 3 months, and although they're kind of characters, I don't mind seeing them every 3 months.
Well,
good for us.
Yeah, you'd like to see it maybe about every 3 days, maybe or so. But like I said, it is good. The restrictions are easing, and like I said, we're not maybe doing things perfectly here, but we'll hope that you'll put up with us in this form and fashion. And of course, today even more restrictions came off for next week, starting on Wednesday. It looks like you'll actually be able to sit inside of a restaurant.
In a bar?
And sit inside of a bar. It sounds like you'll be able to go to a movie theater.
Ooh.
Only like at 25 to 50% capacity, depending upon the establishment. So this is phase 3, they're calling it, of the reopening. And so, we're going to see how things go and progress. And, I think we're going to find out whether we went overboard, went too far, didn't go far enough. We're going to find out. So,
well, I'll tell you, I think we have plenty of time to analyze this because it's not going anywhere. And, if it's growing up here, it's because we're in such isolated conditions and we have so few people that travel around. And when they locked up here, we locked up.
We did,
And so I the second wave and when people get a little bit complacent and all the protests that are going on, that concerns me just in terms of, how much influx of infection is going to come. There were an awful lot of young people out there, so, they don't seem to mind as much, but
they were up. A lot of them were wearing masks.
Yeah, a lot of them were wearing masks.
I got to give them credit.
Yes.
They did, and of course, well, let's not talk politics anymore.
Yes.
Let's talk sports.
Okay,
and
we got some sports.
I see the MLB is on the top of your piece of paper, and I wrote this down. The MLB is a mess.
Yes.
My prediction is there will be no baseball this summer. In 2020, there will be no baseball.
It is so complicated. I mean, in terms of money...
No, I was going to say, it's not complicated. The only reason why it's complicated is because everybody wants their cut of money, and they all have plenty. They just don't think that they should share it nicely.
Well, okay, so they say we'll do an 82 game, and the players come back with 114 games. Well, how do you find a compromise between that? That's quite a gap. And then, contingency plans. What are you going to do if all of a sudden the catcher comes down with a virus? And then there's a question of blackouts. The only people who are going to be watching this thing are television.
Yeah.
And so, are they going to start cutting that off? I don't know if the radio and the rest are going to do this remotely.
I would suspect that's the way a lot of it will be done.
And then you have rosters to 50, which, I like minor league baseball, and this is really going to put the kibosh. Ooh. They're saying next year that they're going to have as few as 20 teams, and I've been to Memphis and I've been to Jacksonville. I've seen some of these top shelf minor league clubs, and it is fun baseball.
Yeah.
Saints, that is super fun baseball, and I hate to see that happen. And then right now the minor leaguers, they have no income, and here they are. They've been playing this game forever, no opportunity to make it in the bigs, and they're done.
Well, a lot of these teams ended up cutting them, outright releasing some of these guys. The Twins, pretty classy what they did. They're going to pay their minor leaguers through August 31st or August 1st, whenever it was. So I think the Twins did it the right way. But what I heard that the owners are saying is or not that the owners are saying, people are saying about the owners is that they'll lose less money if they don't try to play a season. So they're thinking, let's make this as difficult as possible. And if we don't play a season, then we don't pay anybody for 2020 anymore, and we get to keep our money. But if we got to pay the salaries that the players want, we're in bad trouble. And so that's why I see baseball not coming back. And part of the problem with baseball is, if they're going to play it, obviously play it outside, and unless they're going to play neutral site games through the World Series, you can't play in Minnesota in November. Probably shouldn't be. I mean, you might get lucky, you might be able to, but you probably shouldn't be playing.
It's tough.
So they need to get decided what they're going to do sooner rather than later. And like I said, the money, the sides aren't even close, and that's why I say baseball. Baseball, unfortunately, will probably not have a season. That's just my guess right now on June 5th.
I don't know how they're going to piece all these contingencies together, what kind of puzzle they do have. I can't think that the owners are feeling good about this or the players, but, this is what they have, and they've been there before.
Well, and here's the thing now, and we'll move on maybe a little bit from baseball, but the MLS came to an agreement basically in the last 36 hours, whatever it is, that they're going to head to Orlando, and they're going to sequester their teams, and they're going to play like a World Cup style tournament. So the Minnesota Loons are going to get put in, Minnesota UFC is going to get put in with 3 other teams from the Western Conference, and they're going to play them, and then they're going to come out of there and they're going to have a 16-team playoff. So this thing's going to be like a month long, a little bit longer than that, and they're going to see what happens, and then they're hoping, once they see how things all work out, that they're going to be able to have their season. So the MLS really is going to be the first one that's going to get going. They're going to head to Orlando, and some players figure they could be sequestered up to 46 days. No wives, no kids, just the teams. Just the teams. And if players have had medical issues, coronavirus issues, or if they really feel like they don't want to go into this, they will be exempt.
How are they doing it in Europe?
It looks like to me like they're playing it without fans, and they're just doing it.
Okay.
And it looks like they're like I said, playing in empty stadiums, and I think that's I think that's what we're going to see. We're not going to see fans in the stands for these games. Obviously, today, just this afternoon, Friday afternoon, the NBA basically got the Players Association and the owners have agreed to a 22-team, kind of a weird number, but that's what they figured had a chance to make the 16-team playoff. They're going to come back and play 8 regular season games and take a look at things and see how things pan out. And then they're going to play a 16-team tournament. And I think once they get that decided, it sounded to me like they were going to maybe play 1 through 16 rather than going Western Conference, Eastern Conference, all this stuff. So we'll see how things pan out. It's interesting. They're heading for Orlando as well. It's amazing. Disney has all this. They got all these arenas and all these soccer fields. Disney's got 17 soccer fields, all kind of in the same place.
Yeah, they were saying that they have 13 different courts that their basketball teams can practice and play on, and the NHL considered going there as well, because they go up to Tampa and all the rest of that. Hey, Florida's a busy place.
Yeah, it's going to be. I just worry about if the NHL would decide to go there, ice conditions, and I know it gets warm and humid everywhere, but you would think that heading to someplace in the northern part of the nation would make more sense about where you're going and everything else. So the NHL kind of is still sitting with 2 hub cities. They are going to open their practice facilities on Monday. Maximum of 6 players and coaches, and so they added to their playoff thing that they are going to reseed. So like in past years, if the 8 beat the 1, well then the 8 got to play the 4.
Yeah.
If things worked out the right way. Now they're going to say the lowest seed team, you play the highest seed team remaining, and so that you won't see the bracket necessarily that we've seen in the past. So trying some things, it's going to be interesting. I know with the going back to the soccer, they're talking about, because they're playing in Florida outside, early morning matches and late night matches.
Oh boy.
Well, ESPN's got to be saying, well, that's great. Fox has got to be saying, hey, that's great. We'll put your sports on in the morning, can keep our regular stuff in the day and play at night, and we'll put the basketball games on during the day. We'll put the soccer games on the ends, on the beginning and the ends, and everything's going to be great.
It's like those college basketball addicts at the beginning of the year when they start playing for 24 hours straight. And everybody's, it's 11 o'clock, you got two blurry eyes trying to keep.
That's what it's going to be, to try to catch up. And then, like I said, now you put in all for the motorsports, for NASCAR and all that, you start putting that back in, and then you start bringing golf back. And if you're a sports fan, by maybe end of July, you could be into some really busy times.
Well, also then we have to take a look at college football. This is a mess, because there's going to be some schools that are not going to be open and they're going to have online courses, and there's going to be others like. I'm listening to Mitch Daniels, the president of Purdue, saying Purdue is going to be open, the doors are going to be open, the football team is going to be good. I mean, this is the way they see things.
Well, Notre Dame, they're going to open their facilities next week, I think I saw, or the week after.
Yeah.
For their team, for the football team to start coming in. I saw in the Minneapolis paper today, Oklahoma State volleyball team has come back together. They've already got two women who tested positive for the virus.
Well, Alabama's had 11 of them tested positive today on the football team. They all come back. And not that football starts this early in Alabama. Right. So they're a week before volunteer practices. A week before volunteer practices. These kids have football on the mind, and 11 of them
That's
are
a big
tested
number.
positive. That is a big number, and now they're trying to trace who they've been with.
Well,
and all like that.
well, that's the thing now. And so, how do you decide where? When do you stop? When do you tell the people, the kids, the players, the coaches, we're going to have to pull the plug on this?
Well, I think August 1 has to be the date. It has June, July, and I have a feeling, because of all the other situations, that we kind of get a little complacent with this virus, and then it comes back and stuffs it. You just really can't be complacent with this viral infection. All we have to do is take a look at some of the places that it's gone through. But again, here, I don't want to bring that up in International Falls. We are isolated. We have a lot of things going for us. So, this is not a total crisis, but statewide it could be.
Yeah, like I said, there's going to be so much to see over the next few weeks with. We talked about this, about the protests and these people mingling together. Are we going to see a sudden surge in cases with these people out there, even though they were wearing masks? We're going to find out some things that we probably didn't think we were going to find out, because we weren't going to open it up like this, and all of a sudden these people are out and about in very close and very heated conversations and everything else. And so
a lot of things have changed since the last time we did a show.
because the last time we taped the show was on the Tuesday night after the day after.
And the day after, we got home and there it was.
Yeah.
And it's been there ever since.
So yeah, it's a. Well, I likened when I called you. I said this is like 1968.
It is. It's even a little bit different, because this is so worldwide, and it's regarding one man. 1968, they were over, poverty and poor and all the rest of that, and the Vietnam War was huge, and so that's. But I'll tell you what. It was still the same kids.
See, and again, I don't want to get too much into this, but I think it's worthy of a minute or two of our time. Because I asked you, I said, well, how does this compare to '68? And you said this is far bigger.
Well, I think it is.
There's more of this stuff going on, and I guess for somebody who was born after 1968, and I know I'm still old, but to me, when you watch shows about 1968, it seemed like it was an everyday forever type of thing.
It was.
And it seemed like it should be at least as big as what we've had, but from what you're telling me, no, and that's kind of surprised me.
Well, 68 had the national convention. All the real action started in 69, and that's when they had a whole lot of riots, big riots. But they had riots in Detroit in 1965. I mean, tanks went down the street of Detroit. People don't bring that up, but that's the way it was. The Watts in the mid 60s was another big one. But most of the big riots have been catalyzed by police brutality of some sort. The Rodney King case and the rest of this. So it's like we have a situation here that's quite difficult, but a situation that has to be dealt with.
Somebody said this as I was watching ESPN this morning. Somebody said, does it change this time? We've been down this road before. You just mentioned a few of the incidences that have happened in the past. Do we finally get major change this time, or is this something that our country just keeps going through?
The other thing about the 60s and the protests of the 60s and the 70s, and there were a lot of civil rights protests as well, the civil rights protests were predominantly black people. Now,
this is everybody.
It's a 50-50 deal. And that wasn't like that before. So a lot of things have changed. And also there were a lot of little kids involved. There were kids that were walking there. There were young parents. There were a lot of people that I'm worried about my children being in the same situation. I want it to change because it's dangerous for my child.
Yeah.
And I can't argue with that. Boy, how close do we keep our kids to our chest? So this is I'll tell you what, the best performance or best quote that I've got is from Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback at Green Bay, and he just started talking about the Drew Brees stuff, and he says it never was about taking a knee. It was never against the anthem. Now we're starting to see what this was for, and people all of a sudden are saying, taking a knee out of respect for people that have been brutalized and killed. They didn't see any problem with that, and I think that's a whole lot different than it was a couple of years ago.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I think that perception, and like I said, I know we're probably getting off task, but it is involved with the sports. The Colin Kaepernick thing was a big deal. Was that 4 years ago now? I'm trying to make sure I got the years right. And they kind of said this morning he basically lost his job.
Yes.
Over this, and he put his livelihood on the line for something that he believed in, and he was judged, I think, as we look at it, wrongly, and it'll be interesting to see if Colin Kaepernick gets a chance to be a quarterback in the NFL this fall. I don't know.
I don't either. But he's got a lot better chance than he had a year ago, and nobody sees these things coming. It's when you see things like this and you think, boy, I didn't see this coming. Who would ever figure this? But it's like now, Saints wide receiver says he don't know what he's talking about. Another one told him, every once in a while, he should learn to keep his bleeping mouth shut. Yeah. It's just like, these are his teammates, and he's got to know better. I mean, I left International Falls in 1967, went down to UMD. That's where I met my first black man. I never met, we didn't have any here. Right. And you go down there, and all of a sudden, you're playing football with them, with black guys, and you realize you're all competing for the same team. You're all doing what it takes. You are teammates. And I'll tell you what, they might not say, could you see black? No, I could see black, but not for very long, because they were big, fast, and strong, and they could, so you better be able to straighten up and play a game of football with all your teammates, because they were good. And, so I'll tell you what, I really have not been able to look at at a black man in a bigoted way since I played at UMD. It's what you learned, one of the things you learned there.
I see you got June 6th marked down.
Well, this is my T-shirt.
Yeah.
And this is from Toccoa, Georgia. And June 6th, Toccoa, number one, is where paratroopers trained. And they trained at Camp Toccoa out in northeastern Georgia, up in the hills, beautiful hills. You can see North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee from this corner of the mountain, and it is beautiful. And these guys did their basic training at Camp Toccoa, and started in 1942, and I had an opportunity to meet these guys, meet a lot of these guys. And these kids, and that's all they were 17, 18-year-old kids. A lot of them good athletes. They had Buck Compton. He was a catcher for USC, played football for them as well. They were big, fast, strong kids. They prepared to jump into Normandy. And I'll tell you, you see where I have
there. Right there.
Okay. This is 76th anniversry.
Saturday the 6th?
Saturday the 6th. And it's going to be a really important day for me. I will put the flag out, okay, and all the rest of this. But there's guys like, and this is just what I came off, guys that I got to meet: Bill Garnier, Shifty Powers, Bill Wingate, Paul Rogers, Don Malarkey, and Buck Compton and Forrest Guth. These guys are all serious heroes, and they jumped in. Right about now, they would have left.
Yeah.
It was about 11 o'clock on June 5th. They would have taken off, and that's about England time. And so it was just about dark. They had double. What do you call it? Time-saving situation up, and so they took off. And you go back now to see Camp Toccoa, and they have a little camp there. Most of it's taken up, but they ran up. I talked to one guy. How hard was it? He says, sometimes we did 800 push-ups a day. And I said, and then you talk, but you found out back down a mountain called Currahee, and Currahee was. They ran Currahee 3 or 4 times a day. Their company commander was quite brutal. His name was Suarth, and our I can't remember Suarth, but I think it was. So he was our Sobel, Herbal Sobel, and he would drill those guys, and it made him into one of the most remarkable fighting units of World War II. And it happened in Toccoa. Now, kids and teams go to Toccoa all the time. They run up the mountain. They tell the stories about all these guys, how they trained, and they run back down. And I've heard some great stories about high school teams that have had 2 and 6 one year, and all of a sudden they're in the state championship the next year. And how did this happen? Well, we found about serving teammates on top of Currahee. And there is a point to this, because what they find out is Currahee became the model for the 506 Battalion of the 101st Airborne. Currahee, and they would stand up and scream this, Currahee. It means stand alone together. And if there ever was a time that this country could stand alone together, it's got to happen right now, because otherwise sports and all the rest of our culture that we really, really love, and we do, are going to suffer, and we're not going to have that either. So, I want everybody to kind of be kind about this, because these are hectic times, and sports almost becomes a bit irrelevant when you talk about the kind of things that people live and things that people do on both sides of the issue. I would hate to be a law enforcement person in this deal. And it's, anyway, I don't want to go back to any more than that, but you run up Currahee sometime. I don't know as you ever will.
Never.
No. And I
could
won't
walk
either.
it.
No.
I'll never get a chance to run it. No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
What else did you?
Well, I was just writing all kinds of stuff. I said, when I was growing up, you said, Who are your heroes? Well, Jackie Robinson was everybody's hero. Henry Aaron was everybody's hero. Floyd Patterson and Joe Louis were everybody's hero. I really didn't consider any of them black. Roberto Clemente, a black man. He was an incredible man. And you see Gale Sayers and Jim Brown. Did you see a black man? I did, and he was very, very fast and crunched people. You know, you see this and you come to admire these people, and you know they had to be extraordinary men in the 50s and 60s to do what they did. And I mean, I'm talking guys like Curt Flood and some of the rest of these that have give the Major League Union what it is today. But there was you know, it's a strange situation, and in basketball too. I mean, who wouldn't want to go watch a game with Bill Russell? I could do some serious things. I got one more thing to add, and I suppose I can do it now. But it's like, this is a message that I got from Tim Walls, and this was his email. He says, I laid flowers on George Floyd's memorial this morning. As a former high school teacher, I looked up at the mural of George's face painted above, and I reflected on what his death will mean for future generations. What will our young people learn about this moment? And then it goes on further. It's on each of us to determine that answer. George Floyd's death is a symptom of a disease. We will not wake up one day and have this disease of symptomatic racism cured for us. This is on each of us to solve together, and we have hard work ahead. We owe much to George Floyd, and we owe that much to each other. A pretty good tweet. So I thought I'd just share that with what the governor was on the governor's mind.
Yeah, it's obviously he's faced some criticism over the past week or so, and you know, it's a tough business that we're in with everything that's going on. So, geez, we've had a tough run of some sports figures dying on us. Johnny Majors and amongst others.
Johnny Majors, Wes Unseld.
Oh my goodness.
You know, and I remember him. I was in all the times that he played, and you'd think, how can he do what he does? What's that? Well, he is getting 12, 13 rebounds a game, and he'd go into that lane, and nobody moved him out.
No.
Yeah, he's just an incredible basketball player, and from what I understand, a real fine gentleman. Yeah, Wes Unseld. And the other thing about it is he's not much older than me. That concerns me.
Who else did you have on there on the line?
Thomas Werner. You forgot about Thomas Werner? He's the Iditarod racer that couldn't get back to Norway.
Right?
He got back to Norway.
Wow.
They put him on a 1960 vintage prop plane to send to a museum in Norway, and he flew that over the Arctic Circle from Alaska, landed in Norway, and from what I understand, and I saw him coming off the plane, and the dogs were not crated up dogs. They were coming off the plane with him. So Thomas Werner has done pretty well. But I bet the dogs are happy to be home.
I would bet the dogs are very, very happy to be home.
Yeah, he kind of liked Alaska. He thought it was great, but he knew he had to go home because his wife was there, and you got to go home once in a while.
Got to go home once in a while.
That's right.
That's right. So, yeah. And as far as who else passed away, there, like I said, it was a long list. I decided I wasn't going to write them all down because the list was too long. But yeah, Wes Unseld, Johnny Majors were probably two of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
And of course, I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention Mr. Franzen, Jerry Franzen.
You know, he was a great announcer. He was a great announcer, and he was a student of Don Carey, the speech teacher out there. We all were. We all took speech from Don Carey, and I always said, you must have been Don's favorite student. And he says, yeah, I was. But you know, it's like anything else. Sometimes you have disagreements, and having disagreements with Don Carey was not a difficult thing to do. He made me have them every day with him. So,
yeah, I got to know Jerry obviously with my time at the radio station, and you know, when I moved up here in 1994, it was kind of when it was 7 o'clock in the morning, it was Jerry's voice.
Yes.
That meant that it was go time.
Well, you went down there and did some of your sportscasting too.
So, of course, once I got in with the radio thing and then started doing some sports every once in a while in the mornings, and I have to say this because most people never got to see Jerry running the station in the morning. Because obviously you were at home, you were either listening or you were in your car or you were at home, you were getting ready to go to work. But Jerry was a magician. He had 2 computers that he was running. One mouse with this hand and one mouse with this hand. So he had two mouse going, and he had the buttons and the knobs, and he didn't have to look. He would read off of his screen, off of his teleprompter, his computer screen. I'm sure in the old days on his notebook or his what had been typed out, what he had been gotten there early to do. And it was amazing. The MNN, boom, here comes this soundbite, and boom, here comes the commercial, and here this gets turned up, and you get turned, and it was like an orchestra with him. And we all have to go at some point, and Jerry will be remembered for me for a long time for the stuff that he did. Like I said, he was. For me, he was International Falls radio. He was the man.
I would leave town sometime at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5, 6, and I'm driving out of town, and you go downtown and you wouldn't see nothing but the lights on at the radio station, and there would be Jerry at the panel. Yeah. And you always knew that there was going to be somebody up in town. It was probably going to be Jerry Franzen. No, he's going to be missed. He was really a fine guy. Yeah, a lot of people love Jerry.
I see you brought a book with you today.
Oh, I did bring a book. This is 60 Years and 60 Heroes of Minnesota Sports, and I was just kind of looking through this a little bit, and I thought, what was going on in 1950, which would have been 70 years, right? And so I looked at 1950, and I came up with, just mention the names, is Johnny Kundla. I got a letter from Johnny Kundla once.
Really?
Well, because we had a guy here that married Johnny Kundla's daughter, and so I got invited to the wedding, and I looked at the letter, and I said, "Oh my God, Sue, what? Johnny Kundla? I got a letter from Johnny Kundla." She's, "Who's that?" Kundla was a very fine man. He was the coach of the Minneapolis Lakers at the time, now the Los Angeles Lakers, and they won 3 titles in a row with George Mikan and some of the rest of these guys. They had some very good teams for a long time. And then over here, the runner-up is Bernie Bierman. Now, Bernie Bierman, I always found the linkage to Bernie Bierman because he was my coach's coach.
Great. Yes.
He was Butch Larson's coach, and they won the national championship in 34. I think 35 too. They might have run it 2 or 3 or 4 in a row.
I think they won 34, 35, 36.
Yeah, I think 34, 35, 36. And he retired in 1950, 146, 62, and 13.
Not too shabby.
That's not too shabby. We should hope all our Gopher coaches carry such a. But Bertie Bierman, my good friend Steve Rinke lived next door to Bernie Bierman, and he said Mrs. Bierman would have us over for cookies, and he says, and then we go play football in Coach Bierman's yard, and he would come and he'd watch us play football and laugh. I said, yeah, I'll just bet you he did.
Yeah.
So Bernie Bierman, they don't get much better than that in Minnesota history. If I want to go over to the next year, 1951, Johnny Mayasich is the #1 star of the Duluth high school hockey, and I met John Mayasich once, and he truly a great guy. He was a super, but he and Pops Ross and Mariucci and all the rest, they all looked alike. They had nose, they all like got their nose all smashed in playing baseball or something. They had nothing to cover that up. And so they always looked alike to me, especially Mariucci. But John Mayasich, a good Ranger. And then the runner-up that year, 1951, was none other than the Say Hey kid, Willie Mays. And you gotta remember at the time, Brooklyn owned the St. Paul Saints, and Willie was with later was San Francisco, but with New York, and they were over in Minneapolis, the Giants. We had a lot of good baseball players running around in the early 50s, and it just, you didn't know them, but there were a whole bunch of them that wound up in the Hall of Fame. So other than that, I will refer to this every once in a while and just kind of pull out a name that like Slater Martin, Minneapolis Lakers. Yeah, there you are.
Well, I've been working on a little project that I started before the whole virus thing, and now that the library is back open, I'm working on Bronco boys hockey scoring out of the newspaper. So I've been going over to the library. So right now I just got through the 54-55 season. And there's this, there's obviously a lot of great athletes at that time. The Bronco football team won their state championship in 54, and Larry Ross became the coach in 54-55. And in the paper, and like I said, they're talking about everybody, but they're talking about this guy, and his name changed in this 1 year. His name changed 3 times with the newspaper. He went from Lawrence Cronkite to Larry Cronkite, and then it ended up, which people introduced me to him as Jot Cronkite, and I'm like, Jot? What? So it doesn't really explain in the paper how he got the nickname Jot, but by the end of the 54-55 season, he was Jot Cronkite in the newspaper, and they were saying that Eveleth in the playoff game, in the first regular season game, actually double teamed him when he was on the ice because he was that flashy of a player that they had to do this. And Oscar Malley was a sophomore on that 54-55 team, along with Jimmy Glowacz, and I'm mentioning some Hall of Famers here. Bronco Nagurski Jr. was on that team. Paul Stormo, amongst others, and I don't mean to whatever, but it's been amazing just to read through the articles and listen to the writing complaining about the refereing. About how bad the refereeing was on the range, how those Rangers would screw you to the wall, and how the reffing in Fort Francis, and the Broncos played outside by the band shell. By the
band shell. That's the first Bronco game I ever saw. Was
and Eveleth would not play outside. That was with the record that they had. They would not play outside.
They were a little bit prima donnas. They were, how many continual state champions did they have? I just read about John Mayasich and John Mariucci. They're all from.
So it was very interesting to me that they would not play outside, and of course the Broncos were playing over in the fort till the 67-68 season because Bronco Arena didn't open till 68, so they were playing some games back and forth. But it's been very interesting for me to go back and just read through those articles. And then, of course, while you're thumbing through the newspapers, you get to see some other stuff that was going on, the bitter cold winters. And, of course, Ike had just become into power in 53 as president. And there was a big story about how he was Republican, and he had picked a Democrat to be his labor secretary, or one of his cabinet members. And I thought, wow.
Well, that happened all the time.
You would never think about that these days, would you? I mean, you wouldn't think about that.
In those days, they were trying to build coalitions, and it just so happens, and I mean, you would see Ronald Reagan, he'd smash everybody in the mouth all day long, and then at 4 o'clock was time for cocktails, and he'd sit down and talk about baseball or whatever it is you're going to talk about, and so. Politics was different then. Everybody went to Washington and stayed in Washington. Now everybody goes to Washington for a 3-day week and can't wait to get out. The kids lived together. They played baseball together. They had picnics together. They had, Washington cocktail parties were legendary. And I don't think they have that much anymore. And it's really too bad.
I don't know if it'll ever go back to that.
Well, it's going to be a while. Not in my lifetime, for sure.
So, you got anything else?
Let's see. What's coming up this week? Are we going to do a show on Tuesday?
No, we cannot do a show on Tuesday for the same reason why we didn't do a show on this past Tuesday. So we probably are going to have to look to maybe next Friday again.
Okay.
We'll look to that.
Is everything looking like you're going to put together a football team?
I hope that we were going to be able to make that happen. We're working on the process. Kind of got some dates planned now that they opened up the window. You know when you can have contact with the kids and everything else. So yeah, it's starting to come together. Like I said, will it all be for naught? That's the big thing.
That's the question. Are you going to
get to play high school football? And you know, like I said, I think you know, in volleyball you can hit the ball over and do whatever you do, and then somebody wipes the ball off and they dry it off and you keep playing, and you don't have much face-to-face contact. I mean, you get close, but not too much. Cross-country running, yeah. Swimming, I don't know, but I don't know what's going to happen there. But football, as we've mentioned on this show before, kind of tough not to get in somebody's face and have liquid come off of your body, whether it be sweat, spit, blood, snot, whatever it is. And I'm very leery that things will be a go. I certainly hope, but I still think it's more in the not and more in favor of it not happening versus it happening, just because of the testing business. The NFL, the colleges, they can spend that money and go out and test their people every day. NBA, MLS, all those, they're going to spend the money to make sure everybody's safe. But I just don't know how the high schools are going to pull it off in certain capacities. So, like I said, we'll see.
We will.
All right, everybody, thanks for joining this week. Hopefully we didn't get too political with you. I know you listen for sports.
I could have gotten more political, but I won't.
Well, we always can do that. Honestly.
Keep your face masks on. Keep a little further separation than we are, but
yeah, and I think
stay safe out there.
We usually stay away from the politics, but there's so much of it going on this past week. It had to come up.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.